Hey guys, tonight we slip back into a world of cold salt winds, creaking timbers, and lullabies sung beneath fur-lined cloaks as the northern lights swirl above. You're small, still figuring out the difference between snow and sleet, but already your life is pointed toward the sea. There's no choice in it. You were born Viking. Born into a longhouse where stories are thicker than smoke and the horizon always smells like fish. Outside, the fjord hums its low, icy tune. Inside, your cradle is slung beside your mother's weaving loom, and each time she beats the thread, your little head rocks with the rhythm of oars. You hear your first tales before you can speak, whales the size of houses, dragons curled around distant islands, men who went west and never came back. Or maybe they did, but they were different when they did. You don't know it yet, but your future involves sea spray in your teeth and frostbite on your knuckles, and chances are, you probably won't survive this. But hey, somebody has to row the longship. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your earliest memories smell like tar and pine sap boat resin. Sealing pitch, the glue that holds your father's ship together. You see his boots leave trails in the snow toward the boathouse. Some nights you try to follow, barefoot in your woolen nightshirt, until someone scoops you up and deposits you by the hearth again. But you keep trying. Something out there just past the trees, beyond the ice-slick bay, pulls at you. Your toys are miniatures of the real things. A tiny wooden or a carved dragon prow with glass beads for eyes. You push them through puddles with the same care your father gives his warship, the Hafgrimr. If you drop one in the mud, you cry not because it's broken, but because you failed to launch. By the age of 5, you can name every part of a ship. You can also recite all the local gods, in order of helpfulness. Jord, the sea god, gets whispered prayers when storms roll in. There gets the louder ones when you're trying to act brave. Meals are lessons too. While you chew smoked fish and dense black bread, you listen. Grown-ups talk in that half-code adults think kids don't understand. Mentions of sails sighted near the islands, of raids that went wrong, of men who were lost to the depths. But you do understand, and it makes your pulse dance in your chest like a caught herring. One morning, you help your older brother carry kindling and nearly fall off the dock. He grabs you by the scruff and growls, "If you fall in, I'm not fishing you out." Classic brotherly love. But later, you notice him knotting a cord into a child-sized belt for you, proof that Viking affection isn't always spoken aloud. There are chores, of course. You fetch tools, you carry messages, you help rub seal fat into her handles to keep them from splintering. Sometimes you sweep the deck of a docked ship that's taller than a house and smells like iron and wet leather. And when you do, you pretend you're the captain, sailing west. You sleep under thick wool blankets, but the cold still finds the tips of your nose. You dream of waves big enough to crush the sky. Once, you wake screaming about drowning in a sea made of teeth. Your grandmother chuckles and calls it a good omen. Means the sea remembers you, she says, as if that's supposed to be comforting. The adults never say if you'll sail. They say when. Even the most landlocked little Viking eventually ends up in a boat. It's just a matter of age and whether you can stomach the role. There's a strange comfort in the rhythm of it all. The seasons change, but the rituals don't. Every spring, the men test the ropes. Every autumn, they race smear the holes with tar. You're expected to watch, learn, ask good questions. Never interrupt. At solstice feast, the songs shift. They get louder, rougher. More mentions of death and of glorious afterlives waiting for those who meet theirs on the sea. You mouth the words without understanding them. Later, you will. One time, you watch your cousin return from his first voyage, half frozen and limping. He has a long red gash on his cheek and a necklace made of someone else's tooth. You ask if it hurt. He shrugs and says, "Only until I saw the gold." Typical Viking math, injury plus loot equals success. Historians still argue whether Viking boys were formally taught or simply absorbed knowledge through imitation. Based on your life, it's clearly both. You're surrounded by instruction in song and work and story. Even your nightmares seem to carry lessons. Here's a quirky one. Your favorite lullaby isn't about love or rest. It's about a shipwreck. Sung in a slow, eerie tune, it tells of a sailor who sails too far too fast and wakes up in a land where the sea runs red and the stars scream. Your mother sings it with a sleepy smile, like it's the softest thing in the world. By now, you've stood in a longship, just for a moment, just to help scrub or hold a tool, but your feet have felt this way. Your eyes have stared past the prow at the gray knife line of the horizon. You've seen the carved dragon head up close, its chipped teeth glinting like a dare dot, and every time you do, the same thought pricks at your brain like a cold wind under your collar. Someday, this will be mine. You're still small enough to be picked up with one arm, but that doesn't stop anyone from handing you a rope and saying, pull, and you do. Not because you're strong, but because that's what Viking kids do. You don't get training wheels for the sea. You get calluses, blisters, and a lot of yelling from adults with wine-chapped faces and zero patience stopped by 6. Your hands know how to grip. You've been taught how to coil a line without tangling it. You've practiced bailing water from a half barrel in the boathouse, and if you ever tried to quit halfway through, someone, probably your aunt, oddly enough shouted, "You think the sea gives breaks?" And she's right. The sea doesn't give breaks, it gives test. Your chores shift as you grow. You move from shore duties to learning by doing. That means you're dragged onto real boats, usually for harmless things like fishing, hauling nets, ferrying goods between farms. But the first time your little legs wobble on a moving deck, it feels like the ground itself is rejecting you. One wrong step, and you could be in the drink. The water's always watching, always waiting. The worst part, everyone else pretends it's perfectly normal. Your older cousins are already smug experts, balancing with ease, tugging sails into place while joking about sea trolls that bite your ankles if you've fallen. One foggy morning, you help push off from the dock and suddenly there's no land in sight, just gray, rippling infinity. That's when your stomach remembers it hates boats. You lean over the side and feed the fish. No one laughs, a good omen, your uncle says. Better now than when we're raiding. You notice that no one ever teaches you the sea. They just put you in it and expect you to adapt. The closest thing to a lesson is the slap on the back. When you get something right and the grunt when you don't. There's no gold star system here. There's not dead and still useful. That's the bar. There's an old superstition that if your first time on a boat ends in vomiting, the sea claims you as one of its own. Or maybe that's just something the adults say to keep you from crying. Your strength grows fast, hauling buckets, holding tillers, untying knots under pressure. It all builds muscles that ache in the best way. And you get stronger where it counts to. In your ears, your feet, your balance. The pitch of the wind changes and you glance up instinctively. The boat tilts and you bend your knees just enough. You begin to feel the boat not right at dot, and with every outing, you get more privileges. One day, you're allowed to sit at the rudder, not steer. Not yet, but sit there, touch it, feel how it bucks in your hand. Another day, you're given a line and told to help row. The oar is comically big, and you barely make a dent in the water. But everyone watches. This is serious. You don't know it yet, but that was your first mock raid. A practice run. No axes, no screaming, just younglings learning how to paddle in sync, how to follow shouted orders, how to not capsize when the wind decides to misbehave. Historians still debate whether all Viking children were exposed to this kind of early seamanship, or just those from coastal settlements. But in your world, everyone trains, because even a farmer's son might be needed when ships launch in spring. Your practice becomes a rhythm. Pull, breathe, pull, breathe. Your arms burn, your palms blister, and still you pull, until one day, you don't just keep up, you set the pace. That night, your father nods once over dinner. No smile, no words, just the nod. It might be the best compliment you've ever received. You also learn rope work, how to bind, hitch, and anchor. You practice knots until your fingers move faster than your thoughts. There's one knot called the dead man's coil that you find especially satisfying, not because of its morbid name, but because it clicks into place with a soft, satisfying thunk, like a door locking behind you. Fringe fact: some Viking children were given nicknames by the sea. A child who fell in and nearly drowned might forever be called seal bait or wave sleeper. It's both insult and badge of honor. You start memorizing boat parts the way other kids memorize runes. Keel, mast, tiller, beam, the words shape your world. The parts begin to feel like living things. The boat isn't just wood. It's a being, a hungry, unpredictable, wonderful being. And you're part of it now. One day, while hauling nets with your grandfather, he tells you to listen. The sea talks to those who pay attention. You try. You close your eyes. You hear the slap of waves, the whistle of wind in the sails, the quiet creak of the hull. And somehow it does feel like it's speaking. Not in words, but in warnings. Sometimes, your training happens far from water. You learn to repair gear, sharpen iron, smear waterproof fat into boots. You even helped slaughter a seal once. It's smelly, and there's too much blood. But afterward, you realize something. Everything about the sea comes with a cost. Warm boots, dead seal, dry deck, hours of pitch work. Safe voyage, endless practice. You're not taught to fear the sea, but you're taught never to forget what it can do. There are rites you still don't understand. Once, your uncle throws a silver coin into the fjord before sailing out. Another time, your mother leaves a bowl of milk on the windowsill during a storm. You ask why. She says, to keep the wave wives happy. You nod like you understand. You absolutely do not. But you don't question it. Because every adult you know treats the sea like a half-tamed god, respected, fed, and never, ever ignored. You're only 8 when you first help beach a boat. It's harder than it looks. The weight of the ship is shocking, like trying to move a mountain with your back. But when it finally slides up onto the gravel and the others cheer, you beam like you just won a battle. Maybe you did. Because that's what every day feels like now. Tiny battles. Against pain, against cold, against your own smallness. And slowly, you're winning. You're maybe 10 now, though no one's really counting. Viking years aren't tracked the same way your age is more often measured. By how many ore blisters you've had, or how many fish you've cleaned without gagging. Childhood in this world is slippery, brief, and full of testing tides. By this point, you've stopped vomiting at sea. Congratulations. You've also started to crave that first lurch of the longship as it pulls away from land. It's a mix of fear and thrill, like running downhill with your eyes closed. And while you haven't faced a storm yet, you've heard enough stories to know they're coming. That's how Viking children learn the sea's moods, through stories. Not from books because, well, books, please, but from people with scarred hands and weathered eyes. You sit cross-legged on thick wool blankets, and someone older, maybe a one-eyed sailor with a voice like gravel, starts telling tales. Just as the fire crackles low, you hear about a crew that vanished into fog thicker than wool. One boy aboard shouted something about a pale woman standing on the water, and then the ship was gone. Poof, gone. You're told the sea spirits don't like loud voices or lies. You make a mental note to whisper more and always tell the truth. It's bedtime lore, sure, but also practical advice. These stories are survival guides with fangs. And half the time, they're true-ish. Sometimes the grown-ups let you steer the ship in calm waters. The tiller is heavy, but you grip it like it might fly away. They say things like, steady now, and feel the current in your arms. You nod, eyes wide, pretending you know exactly what that means. You don't. You also begin learning. Wind. It's not enough to feel it, you must understand it. The wind has moods. Some are cruel, others lazy. There's the biting eastern gust that rips the warmth from your teeth, and the rolling southern wind that smells like moss and secrets. You're taught to sniff the air before a voyage. If it smells wrong, to still, to sharp, you delay. Or at least you try. Sometimes, grown-ups ignore warnings. That's how you get stories like the Red Wake voyage, where every man returns soaked in blood, carrying no treasure, just silence. Historians still argue whether young Vikings were formally drilled in weather lore or if it came from constant exposure. Either way, you get your first weather lesson not from a teacher, but from nearly capsizing during a sudden gust in the inlet. You scramble, scream, and almost fall overboard, but you don't. You stay upright. You remember that feeling. After that, you notice things, the ripple of water before a squall, how birds fly lower before rain, and how your uncle's beard seems to twitch right before bad weather. You suspect it's unintentional, but still useful. There's another kind of storm training, one that doesn't involve water. It involves fear. One afternoon, while helping load fish barrels, a voice shouts, "Raid." And before you can blink, the adults scatter, some grabbing weapons, some diving into boats, some shielding children. Except this time, they don't shield you. You're grabbed and shoved into the back of a fishing boat. Then, silence. It was a drill. No one tells you it was. But you know. Because after a few minutes, everyone's back to hauling barrels like nothing happened. You're left sitting there, heart thudding like war drums, wondering what just happened. Realizing you failed. You hesitated. You froze. The sea, and those who live on it, don't forgive hesitation. Your friends get the same treatment. One gets tied to a mast during a storm just to test his reaction. Another is left alone on a boat overnight, with only a lantern and a single fish for food. Harsh? Maybe. But it's also how you prepare for the fact that someday, you might actually be alone out there. Some kids flourish, others fade. There's one boy, Lars, who never stops crying during drills. Eventually, he gets moved to shore work, rope making, tanning hides. He's not mocked, but he's no longer treated like he'll be crew. You learn then, the sea chooses. And it doesn't choose everyone. Here's something quirky: some parents throw their kids into freezing water on purpose, then time how long it takes them to crawl out. It's not abuse, it's tradition. It's called wave baptism, and the idea is that once you've beaten the cold once, it can never surprise you again. You hated it, but you also tell the story like a badge of honor now. Your imagination is also part of your training. You build pretend ships from driftwood and snow. You assign your siblings roles: oarsman, navigator, dragon spotter, and then you set sail right across the meadow. You shout warnings of sea monsters and throw sticks at invisible pirates. You capsize on purpose just to learn how to right the ship. And guess what? That's not just play, that's rehearsal. Viking childhood is basically one long, salt-soaked improv act, where every game hides a skill. The adults never praise directly, but once, during a particularly windy trip, you manage to adjust a sail rope before anyone tells you. You're at grunts. Finally, that's Viking for I'm proud of you. At home, the lessons continue. You carve little ships from bone or driftwood. Your father inspects them, then critiques your work with brutal honesty. This hull would split in light rain. Cool. Thanks, Dad. Sometimes elders speak of far-off lands: Greenland, Iceland, the place with flaming mountains. You want to see them all, but before that, you'll need to pass the real test: surviving your first storm. Because no matter how many nets you mend, stories you memorize, or ropes you tie, you're not truly sea-born until you face a storm and come out the other side wet, shivering, grinning like a lunatic. That storm's coming. You can smell it. The storm doesn't arrive with drums or dragons. It creeps in. You're maybe 12 now, and starting to look like someone the crew might listen to instead of trip over. You're taller, harder, and your shoulders don't flinch when the wind howls. You can haul more than your weight in salted fish and tie knots faster than some of the adults. But you still haven't faced the one thing that separates a deckhand from a true Viking sailor. A real, howling, white-knuckle open sea storm. Until now, the voyage begins innocently enough. A supply run to a nearby village, simple, familiar. The sky is calm. You even joke with your friend out Bjorn that maybe today's the day you finally catch a glimpse of a selkie, those shape-shifting seal folk everyone keeps whispering about. You're not sure if they're real, but you're also not stupid enough to say that out loud. The wind picks up halfway through the trip. You hear your uncle curse softly. That's when you know. Vikings only curse before the storm, not during. During is for praying. The sails go slack, then snap taut as the gust slams into them sideways. The sea hisses, the sky turns from steel to something closer to bruised bone, and you grab the nearest rope and hold on like your entire body is a knot. The storm hits like a beast without eyes. You're drenched in moments. The boat bucks like a hunted animal. Someone yells for balance. Someone else vomits over the side. The tiller jerks so hard you think it might snap. You fall twice but keep scrambling back to your feet. You don't cry. That's important. The air smells like panic and seaweed. And something older, deeper, like the ocean's breath, has teeth. You don't think. You move. One of the sail lines comes loose. You grab it, wrap it 3 times, wedge your boot, pull. You're not strong enough, but you don't let go. Later, you learn the ship was never really in danger. The storm passed quickly. The grown-ups even say it was small. But for you, it was the moment the sea stopped being a story and became a presence. And you didn't flinch. You didn't fail. That means something. From that day on, your training changes. It gets sharper. More specific. You start learning how to navigate. Not with maps, papers rare and soggy, anyway, but with stars, birds, cloud shapes, and sun paths. You learn that ravens don't fly far from land. That whales sometimes surface near islands. That the sea reflects the sky's mood in ways landlocked people will never understand. You're taught about sunstones, translucent crystals Viking sailors allegedly used to detect the sun's direction on cloudy days. Historians still argue whether this is myth or science, but you're handed one all the same. It catches light oddly, like it knows something you don't. You also begin weapons training. Not just because you might raid, but because the sea isn't the only thing that kills. Pirates exist, so do enemy clans. And you, little sailor in the making, are expected to hold your own. You start with a wooden sword, then a real one. Practice includes shouting, shielding, and trying not to stab yourself in the leg. You're not a warrior yet, but you're learning how to swing steel without tripping over your own feet. Progress. There's a brutal trick your father plays. He tells you to draw a sea route in the dirt, one you've sailed dozens of times. Easy, right? Then he wipes it out and says, now do it from memory. Blindfolded. The first time, you cry. The second, you miss one island. The third, perfect. And he doesn't say a word. He just walks away, which, in Viking parenting terms, is practically a standing ovation. You learn how to listen when no one's speaking. At sea, Silence means something. It means tension, a change in the wind, a shape on the horizon. Your body becomes a weather vane, your heartbeat a compass. You are being shaped into a sea creature, whether you know it or not. You also begin to understand fear differently. It's not something to avoid. It's a tool. If you're afraid of falling overboard, you move more carefully. If you're afraid of storms, you pay attention. It's only when you stop being afraid that you get stupid. And then you die. There's a quiet night when the sky is clear, and the stars seem almost too close. Your mother hands you a piece of worn leather. On it are crude marks, dots, circles, slashes, a family record, she says. Each symbol is a voyage someone in your line took. You trace the one marked with an X near the top. That was your great uncle, she whispers. Got caught in an ice trap near Vinland. Came home with frostbite and 3 new gods. 3 new gods. You stare at the stars a long time that night. You're not the only one being tested. All around you, your peers are being forged, too. Some pass, some vanish. That boy Bjorn, he froze during a sudden squall and had to be rescued. Now he fishes from shore, and no one says why. It's not shame, it's just acknowledgement. He wasn't chosen. There's a fringe belief among the older sailors that certain kids are born with sea blood, a sort of second pulse that beats in time with the tide. No one can prove it, but when you're out on the water, feeling the creak of the hull under your feet, you're pretty sure your blood does something strange. Your father finally lets you take the tiller during a real voyage, a short one, but real. He watches you like a hawk. You feel the weight of the ship, the pull of the current, the whisper of the wind. You adjust course, barely, just enough. And he nods once. Later that night, he carves a tiny symbol onto the side of the boat, a curled wave and a spear. Your mark. Your first voyage. Official. You don't celebrate. You just smile quietly and run your fingers over the fresh cut in the wood. You earn this. You're not a child anymore. Not really. You've weathered your first storm, held the tiller in open water, even navigated using stars and that strange sunstone that now feels more like a lucky charm. Been a tool. You've trained with weapons, memorized the shape of every island in your part of the world, and earned a carved symbol on the ship's hull. But none of that means you're ready. Not fully. Because the sea has one more test for you. The final one. You're now in your last stretch of youth, a liminal space where the adults start looking at you differently. Less like someone they need to protect. More like someone they might rely on. And nothing changes. You're standing in the village faster than being invited on a real voyage. Not a training run. Not a short-haul ferry. A real, grown man raiding season voyage. You've been watching the preparations since the snow started to melt. The sails checked, the hulls sealed, weapons cleaned, food salted and packed into barrels. The excitement is so thick in the air it smells like sweat and iron. You try not to hover, but your eyes stay glued to the boats like they might launch without you if you blink too long. One morning, your father says, "We leave in 2 days. You're coming." You don't shout, don't cheer. Don't cry. You just nod. Because that's what Vikings do. You spend the next 48 hours checking and rechecking your pack. You carry it wrong the first time. Your sister laughs and shows you how to balance it across your back, so the weight won't pull you sideways when the waves get rough. She's never sailed, but she knows these things. Everyone does. The knowledge is in the bones. The night before the voyage, you don't sleep. You lie awake, listening to the longhouse creak in the wind, trying not to let your hands shake. A part of you hopes something goes wrong so the trip gets canceled. The rest of you would burn down the house just to make sure it doesn't. And in the morning, it begins. You're on the boat. You're rowing. You're feeling the rhythm echo in your legs and shoulders. You're heading west. No more practice. This is real. And everything is harder. The hours are longer. The food is worse. The waves are crueler. You thought you were strong. You were wrong. But somehow, you still pull. Still hold the line. Still keep your balance when the ship hits swell. After swell, then comes the ritual. Every youth on their first real voyage has to undergo it. It's not written down, and no one explains it aloud. But you know, one night, under a starless sky, your father and 2 other warriors pull you aside. They say nothing, just lead you to the prow. You're told to stand there, alone, facing the dark. The wind cuts like knives. The sea stretches out in front of you like a god with no face. And you wait. And our pauses, maybe more. Eventually, someone calls you back, says nothing. You passed. You're not sure what the ritual meant. Was it a test of courage, patience, endurance? Maybe all of it, or maybe none. Historians still debate whether such Viking rites of passage were formalized or improvised. Either way, you did what you had to. And now, no one calls you boy anymore. You get real shifts, real duties, real consequences. You help navigate around skerries and through narrow fjord mouths, reading water like others read runes. You sleep, in shifts, curled beside barrels of dried fish and axes. You learn that snoring is a form of music when you're too tired to care. There's a skirmish, not a major raid, but a clash with another crew over disputed anchorage. It's your first taste of battle. It's quick, loud, messy. You don't kill anyone, but you take a blow to the ribs and leave someone else limping. Blood gets on your tunic. It smells like metal and victory and something you can't quite name. You don't cry. You're starting to understand now why the sea is both feared and worshipped. Why some men sing to it. Why others offer it bits of silver, hair, or blood. Because it takes. But if it lets you live, it also gives. You return from that voyage a little taller, a little quieter. At the next feast, you're asked to speak just a few words. You say something about the stars being brighter when you're not sure you'll see them again. The room goes still, then erupts in laughter and nods. It's not poetry, but it's honest. That counts for more. Your final trial is one no one assigns. You volunteer for it. Late one night, you take a skiff, a small boat, barely more than a carved-out log, and sail alone across the fjord. It's stupid, risky, exactly the kind of thing a young Viking must do to prove to himself, if no one else, that he's not just along for the ride. It takes you half the night. You nearly flip twice. You talk to yourself, curse the sea, then thank it. And when you arrive at the far shore, you lie in the sand and laugh until you fall asleep. You made it. No one's there to see it. But that doesn't matter, because you know. And now, you're ready for whatever lies beyond the horizon. The sea is quiet tonight. Not flat, never flat, but calm, like it's remembering how to breathe slowly. The same way you do, now that your journey's complete. You've felt the cold of the salt spray on your face. You've learned to read the wind's whispers, the stars' gentle hints, and the stories folded between the waves. You've stood alone in the dark, held your breath through storms, and found your rhythm in the creak of the oarlock and the pulse of the tide. You're not the same child who once watched longships from the shore with wide eyes. That child has been reshaped, carved by water, fire, and time. And even though the sea still holds its mysteries, its tempers, its strange ancient songs, you no longer fear them. Because now, you belong to it. So, as your longship drifts in for the night, and the northern lights ripple faintly above, let the cool hush of the ocean rock you. Picture the soft knock of hull against dock, the clink of ropes, the low hum of tired sailors slipping into sleep. The stars blink down with quiet approval. And you're wrapped in wool, heart steady, mind clear. The voyage is behind you. The horizon is waiting. And for now, just for this moment, you can rest.